I'm going to be reading the final presentation questions. I'm not sure if this is going to count for my grade, but I just figured I'd try anyway. The first one, and I know you mentioned that we get 1 minute per question, so I'll try to keep it to 1 minute. The first question is, what story or reading or activity from this course was the most significant to you? And it was definitely the readings from the Takaki group assignment. I remember learning about a lot of those events when I was like in grade school. We learned about like John Smith and like the Great Migration and all of that stuff, but like reading it from like the writings of like John Smith and like a lot of the things that went on that like we didn't really learn about in grade school was really interesting. And like something that was like really shocking to me was reading about how like there was the period of like the Great Starvation, where like the settlers like ran out of resources and like were basically starving and like eating each other. But like the Native Americans still brought them food, yet like they still decided to like raid their villages and like take their land despite the fact that like they helped them through their hard time. And like there was kind of some like more like gruesome stuff that I thought it was interesting reading about too. Like I remember reading about how like they would like throw like the Native American babies like overboard and like shoot them in the head and stuff, and like that's not really stuff that you learn about in grade school, so like I thought that was interesting because like I didn't know that that was happening. And just overall like everything in that assignment was really interesting to read about. What was the most memorable event or moment in the class for you? Again, the Takaki group assignment. And how was it memorable? It was memorable because like it was my first time working with like a group online, and I wasn't super confident going into it because like I knew I was probably going to have to do most of the work to make sure that like things were done because there wasn't anybody that really took the lead, so I kind of had to do that. But it ended up working out and like everybody did their stuff. It was a little bit stressful because like they kind of did it at like the last minute, and like the communication was off sometimes because like we couldn't get everyone on the same group chat. But we ended up figuring it out anyway. But I do think that like it's more effective working in groups, like kind of like in an online setting, because I feel like a lot of the time like time is wasted when you meet in person because everyone's kind of like agreeing that they're gonna do this and this and this when they get home. So it's like we have a half hour to an hour to like us basically just talking about what we're gonna do when we get home. So that was memorable. Number 3 is what have you discovered in your thoughts, attitudes, beliefs, and emotions during this course? I wrote that like even though like this course was about like other cultures and like communicating with other cultures, I think a lot that I learned was like about myself too, because there were a lot of assignments where like you would ask us questions about like what we believe and like how does this relate to our lives and stuff like that, and like I was really able to evaluate that. And I think that like that's important too, because like as ourselves we need to know like where we come from. We need to be aware of our background and our roots, and like everybody's backgrounds are different, and like the more you know about like your own background and like can talk about it with like a group of people, such as how we did in our class, like we learn from each other. So like the more we know about ourselves, the more we can teach others about our cultures and who we are and how we communicate best. Yeah, and I just think it's important for people to know where they came from. Number 4, what is your prediction about the future of cross-cultural communication / relationships in the U.S.? What will you do in your continuing quest toward improving our intercultural existence in this country? Be specific. I think that it's only going to get better from now on. I think like we've already seen throughout history, like we've seen like legislations be passed and like people really becoming activists for like change, and I just think that like it sounds kind of bad, but like I feel like a lot of like older perspectives are gonna die out and people are gonna realize that like, hey, everybody's actually like the same, and like we're all worth the same. Doesn't matter like what our skin color is or where we come from, because like we're all just brothers and sisters living on the same planet, and we have to learn to like put our differences aside, although still like appreciate each other and our differences. Like I think that like the world is becoming more and more connected. Like we have obviously like social media, we can call people on our phones, we can text message, and like that's also been really important because like people can connect with each other like more, and like more ideas can be shared and like distributed to like a wider amount of people. So it's like, I don't know, just like the more we're connected as people on earth, I think like the more ideas can be shared, and like this country is becoming more progressive as time goes on, and like we're seeing people take roles that they weren't able to before, such as like obviously Barack Obama. Like we had our first black president, we have our first female vice president now, and like it's just things that like people would have never thought imagined would have happened like 100 years ago. This is like that's going to become the normal, and I think it's important to ask the difficult questions, and like, you know, like instead of assuming things about people because they look a certain way, like we have to ask each other, and like the more we ask each other, the more we understand about each other, and the more we understand about each other, the better we can communicate. Yeah, that's all the questions on here, so thank you for listening.